justice, providing an overview of the risk of genocide and the vulnerability to genocidal acts. I'm not giving long bios tonight because our esteemed guests are well known to us, but I'll pass on to you. Thank you, Dr. Hassim.
Thank you, sir. Can I put underneath both hands? Okay, it is working. Shabbat Shalom. Good evening. Honorable Minister Lamola, DG Dango, Mama Machel, Professor Eid, the kind hosts of this event, the organizers, the Nelson Mandela Foundation, and South African Jews for a Free Palestine, and guests. When counsel address a court, and it is a complex case, which may be easily misunderstood, they often open with the following. Let me begin by saying what this case is not about. Sometimes that works. Let me begin by saying what my talk to you this evening is not about. First, it's not about the case before the ICJ. I'm sorry to disappoint, but I am bound by my professional ethics not to engage in the merits, demerits, predictions of an ongoing case. It is in any event not the case of the lawyers in the team, but of South Africa. And the representatives of South Africa here present are able and eloquent spokespeople. Second, my comments are not premised on the conflict between Palestine and Israel as centered on religion. This is not about religion. It's about our moral obligations in the face of a conflict that has reached its current horrific proportions. That said, what I would like to express is that it is of special importance to me to speak to you at the venue of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, because when we speak the name of our former leader and president, Nelson Mandela, we assume the posture of a just peace. Shalom. It is important for me that my few remarks this evening are understood as being rooted in a quest for a just and sustainable peace. As Zandi has already alluded to earlier this evening, the words of Madiba from a speech that he made on the International Day of Solidarity with the Palestinian people in 1997, where he famously said, "We know too well that our freedom is incomplete without the freedom of the Palestinians, without the resolution of conflicts in East Timor, the Sudan, and other parts of the world." The speech was made a few years after the conclusion of the Oslo Accords, an event which prompted the president to continue in the same speech to say, I quote, "We are proud as humanists that the international consensus on the need for the implementation of the Oslo agreements is finding expression in the efforts of the multitude of Israeli and Palestinian citizens of goodwill who are marching together, campaigning together for an end to prevarication. These soldiers of peace are indeed sending a message to us all that the day is not far off when Palestinian and Jewish children will enjoy the gay abandon of God in a peaceful and prosperous region, end quote. How terribly distressing it would be for Madiba, as it is for us, to witness the nightmare of the latest war in Gaza. There appears to be no hope for an end to the hostilities between Israel and Palestine, at least not for an end that is not coupled with devastation or that permits for a sustainable peace. But we can't find our way through this without hope. For a realistic hope, we need to begin with an honest conversation where several truths are acknowledged with the aim of accountability and meaningful justice. Here's a first truth. What we have witnessed in Israel on 7 October and are witnessing in Gaza, the profound inhumanity, did not emerge from nowhere. We cannot speak in hushed tones about the Nakba, meaning catastrophe in Arabic. It was indeed a catastrophic event marked by the forced displacement, dispersal, and dispossession of hundreds and thousands of Palestinians from their homeland. This enduring trauma has left a gaping wound in a collective consciousness of the Palestinian people, who still carry the burden of that displacement and loss to this day, most obviously by wearing the actual or symbolic keys to their former homes around their neck. The persistent refugee status of a vast majority of Palestinians serves as a crude reminder of the unresolved injustices and the failure to address their right to return to their ancestral lands. The daily indignities and violations of basic human rights endured by Palestinians, including restrictions on movement, home demolitions, and arbitrary detention, aggravate their suffering. I saw firsthand what these daily indignities are when I visited the West Bank in 2014. It is untenable. It is a powder keg. In Gaza, the situation was made worse by Israel's blockade. As Avi Shlaim puts it in his characteristically blunt tone, quote, "The stated purpose of the blockade was to stop the transfer of weapons and military equipment to Hamas, but it also restricted the flow of food, fuel, and medical supplies to the civilian population." One American senator was outraged to discover that pasta was on the list of proscribed items. The boycott applied not only to imports, but perversely also to some exports from Gaza. Why prevent the export of agricultural products, fish, and other non-lethal goods? It is difficult to avoid the conclusion that the hidden motive was to cripple Gaza's economy and to inflict poverty, misery, and unemployment on its inhabitants. In its non-military aspects, the blockade constituted a form of collective punishment that is clearly proscribed by international law, end quote. So let's be honest. This is not a war amongst equals. These injustices that I describe ever so briefly demand recognition, because that is the only way to secure accountability and a just resolution. There can be no peace without this. But an honest conversation can't end there. Here's a second truth. We cannot and must not extinguish the memory of the Holocaust. An utter dehumanization of the Jewish people with the express aim of extermination. It is estimated that there are about 245,000 survivors of the Holocaust. This is according to a report published in January this year. And those few will very, very soon be no longer. But the memory of the Holocaust will not end with the demise of the remaining survivors. And anti-Semitism did not end after the Holocaust. We should not pretend otherwise. And we, Jews and non-Jews, must remain vigilant. Both anti-Semitism and Islamophobia are forms of racism that we all need to counter. We must resist a game of one-upmanship and recognize that we must stand together and fight against both forms of racism. A third truth: unrestrained violence on either side is not a path to peace. As we enjoy and will enjoy our Shabbat dinner this evening, at least 28,340 Palestinians were killed in Gaza, including at least 12,300 children. The scale of death is staggering. Israel, of course, has a right to self-defense, but it does not have a right that works up a calculus that no Palestinian life has value, that all Palestinians, children included, are killable on the spot. This is not defensible in international law, and it is not morally defensible. In 2009, after Operation Cast Lead, Schleim said this: "The biblical injunction of an eye for an eye is savage enough, but Israel's insane offensive against Gaza seems to follow the logic of an eye for an eyelash." Is it ironic, sad, shocking that this comment could have been made today, 14 years later? However we analyze it, one thing is clear. The unrestrained violence then did not lead to peace and security now. Instead, 14 years later, the Israeli Defense Minister proclaims, quote, "We are imposing a complete siege on the city of Gaza. There will be no electricity, no food, no water, no fuel. Everything is closed. We are fighting human animals, and we are acting accordingly." This kind of rhetoric argues that Israeli life, Jewish life, is only possible by ending Palestinian life. Gallant's view is dangerous. It places Israeli citizens and Jews everywhere at risk. This rhetoric and the actions that follow it must stop. For the people of this region to live together, to coexist, whether as one state or two, the violence must stop, and a discussion must begin on how to live together in the future. Honesty, accountability, and justice is the only path to a just and sustainable peace. As South Africans, we know the possibilities of that path. We also know the pitfalls. A form of honesty that ends with a TRC like ours will not lead to accountability or justice. It will only lead to a resurfacing of legitimate anger for past atrocity. Accountability is essential. And for the process to be effective, the accounting must begin. To conclude, I would like to refer to a recent piece by Amira Hass. She interviewed survivors from Gaza who managed to flee to a safer place. One of them says, "I'm not dead, but in many ways, I don't exist." This is the impact, some say the goal, of the war. A denial of the impact and implications of the current conduct of the Israeli government will not lead to peace. So let's start with an honest conversation, no matter how difficult. And let's start by harnessing our collective humanity. Thank you.
Thank you very much to Dr. Hasim for those moving words and important truths. I'm now going to ask our second speaker, Honorable Minister Lamola, to share some words with us. You will all have seen that Lamola represented our government and opened our case at the International Court of Justice.
Thank you very much, Advocate Hasim, Professor Ed, the Director General of International Relations, Mr. Dango, Mama Kraka, the Acting CEO of the Nelson Mandela Foundation, the Program Director, the entire Nelson Mandela Foundation leadership, the South African Jews for a Free Palestine, and all who are here this evening to attend this service, the Shabbat. I feel honored to be amongst yourself this evening in this secret service of the Shabbat. It's for the first time I find myself in this kind of a gathering, but I really appreciate and really honor the invitation. Umuntu ngumuntu ngabantu. It's one of the values that not only permeates through the spirit and the text of our constitution, it is also in the DNA of South Africa. Ubuntu is what Madiba taught us, is what he bequeathed to the world. I thank the Nelson Mandela Foundation and the South African Jews for a Free Palestine for this occasion. And the fact that you have welcomed everyone, irrespective of their religion, their political views, their affiliation, sports, and whatever nature or creed. I've also seen Muslims in the crowd and people from other walks of life. It's a sign that a secular state in South Africa is alive, and we can all live in harmony together with each other with love. And this is a type of life we want to bequeath to the world, to the people of Israel and to the people of Palestine, that coexistence is possible. We are such an example. And this evening's gathering demonstrate that it is possible, it can be done. We recognize that the principle of Ubuntu extends beyond our borders and has the potential to shape global discourse on human rights. Ubuntu teaches us that we are interconnected and that our actions have ripple effects on others. It emphasizes the importance of empathy, compassion, respect for the dignity of every individual. In the context of human rights, Ubuntu challenges us to go beyond legal frameworks and institutional mechanisms. It calls for us to self-respect, to look into our consciousness. It calls for a deeper understanding of the interconnectedness of all human beings and the recognition that our well-being is intertwined with the well-being of others. Ubuntu compels us to address the root cause of inequality, discrimination, and injustice, rather than treating them as mere symptoms. Ubuntu also reminds us of the importance of collective responsibility. It encourages us to work together to build a society that upholds the rights and the dignity of everyone. This means actively challenging the systems, the structures that perpetuate inequality and discrimination, and promoting inclusivity and social justice. In South Africa, the values of Ubuntu has been instrumental in the process of reconciliation and nation building. It has guided our efforts to heal the wounds of the past and to build a society based on equality, justice, and the respect for human rights. Ubuntu has helped us to move beyond the divisions of the past and embrace our shared humanity. Our humanity extends beyond the boundaries of race, ethnicity, gender, or religion. It is the beautiful tapestry of diversity that defines us and makes us strong. However, it is vital that acknowledge that racial inequality still persists in our country, despite our transformative journey towards a democracy that is inclusive. And this journey will continue to work on it. We took an important step inspired by the Holocaust. The Never Again principle, vowed by our oppressors and also our former President Mandela, echoed this sentiment, declaring that our country will never again be the subject of indignity. We believe that this should never happen to any race anywhere in the world. It will not happen to the Palestinian people. It will also not happen to the Israel people. Our predecessors, including Dula Omar, endorsed international agreements like the Genocide Convention and the Rome Statutes, reaffirming our commitment to a more compassionate society and a world free of injustice. Consistency in multilateral institutions is crucial. As we advocate for universal human rights, we firmly believed that a nation and individual should be held accountable for their actions, especially where the very essence of humanity is at stake. It is in this regard that we continue to call for the International Court of Justice and the ICC, the International Criminal Court, to hold the individuals responsible for the atrocities in Gaza accountable, themselves as human beings and as individuals. Africa herself is not at peace. The guns, violence, and acts of terror reign supreme in some of our parts of our continent. And South Africa has been instrumental in resolving a significant number of continent's conflicts, either by mediating or by deploying armed forces under the auspices of the United Nations. Our country approached the International Court of Justice with a sought to affirm the values that Nelson Mandela bequeathed to us, that there should be a just solution to the people of Palestine that is equitable to all citizens, that there must be a stop to the genocide, that we must appeal to the international conscience of the international community to call for their friends, to call for their enemies, to stop the genocide that is happening in Gaza. Within the confines of that institution, we have an opportunity to not only to affirm, but also strengthen the humanity's commitment to justice. This can be achieved through all of us everyone across the globe, infusing and bringing to life the convention, the Genocide Convention, to ensure that it does what it was intended to do, to stop genocide from ever happening in the eyes of everyone. And this is what Nelson Mandela would have expected us to do. South Africa has recently enjoyed a dark period marked by crimes against humanity. The echoes of state-sponsored violence, primarily manifesting as racial injustice, are still reverberating throughout our nation, casting long shadows over our present, and it is against this background that we must continue to fight against injustice anywhere in the world. Nelson Mandela, our cherished founding father, once imparted to us that, and I quote, "Our daily deeds as ordinary South Africans must produce an actual South African reality that will reinforce humanity in justice, strengthen its confidence in the nobility of the human soul, and sustain all our hopes for a glorious life for all." This inspiring belief shapes our worldview and forms the foundations of our action, a testament to why we are present here today. We advocate for a just and a peaceful solution that guarantees the rights for all between the State of Israel and Palestine. The South African government has recently requested the ICJ to invoke Article 75(1) of the court, which I quote, it says the court may at any time decide to examine proprietio metu, whether circumstances of the case requires the indication of provincial measures which ought to be taken or complied with by any or all of the parties. The current prevailing situation in Gaza, in particular Rafah, calls for the court to act and not to wait for the whole processes of the case to take place. We remain steadfast in the support and in pursuit for a just solution to this enduring conflict in Israel and in Palestine. We believe that with the support of all of you, of the international community, we can all stand in one voice, call for the State of Israel to stop what it is doing. Your presence here is appealing to the collective conscience of the global community to stand up and stop it. It is also appealing to the State of Israel to stop the state-sponsored violence, displacement of innocent life, in particular children and women. I want to thank you again and appreciate the opportunity to be here with you this evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much to Honourable Minister Lamola for that call to action and clarity on our government's moral stance and responsibility. I'm now going to hand over to Professor Haydar Eid, who is Associate Professor of Post-Colonial and Postmodern Literature at Gaza's Al-Aqsa University in Palestine.
Thank you. Honourable Minister Lamola, Honourable Legal Team Member to The Hague, Dr. Adela Hassim, comrades, sisters and brothers, my name is Haydar Eid and I'm from Gaza, but originally I come from the ethnically cleansed village of Zarnuga. Both of my parents were born in the village of Zarnuga before 1948. In 1948, the Zionist gangs decided to attack more than 460 villages in Gaza and all major cities, in Palestine, and all major cities and towns, including the village of Zarnuga. Both of my parents moved to the Gaza Strip and lived in the Nusayrat refugee camp where I was born. I grew up in the Gaza Strip, and I got my BA degree and my master's degree from Eastern Mediterranean University in Cyprus. After that, I decided to come to South Africa and pursue my studies. And I got my PhD degree from University of Johannesburg. After which I decided to go back to Gaza in order to join my people and fight against Zionism and try with my people to set Palestine free. I've learned lessons while I was in South Africa. I met anti-apartheid activists. I have developed relationships with people who suffered under apartheid. And I decided also to tell our people in Palestine about the struggle of Nelson Mandela, Steve Biko, Archbishop Desmond Tutu, and all the fighters for freedom in South Africa. That was an important and a necessary introduction just to give you a context of what has been going in Palestine and about my contribution. In 2006, we were asked by the President of the United States of America, at the time, George Bush, after the destruction of Iraq and spreading the propaganda, the lie of Americans' aim of spreading democracy in the Middle East, we were asked to head to the polling station and vote for our representatives. And when I say we, I mean the Palestinians of the Gaza Strip and the West Bank. Only 1/3 of the Palestinian people. Refugees living in the diaspora were never asked to vote. Palestinian citizens of the State of Israel were never also asked to join the elections that took place in January 2006. People in the Gaza Strip and the West Bank decided to vote. And when they voted against the Oslo Accords. They voted against the facade of the two-state solution because people believed that the United States of America, apartheid Israel, and reactionary Arab regimes would not allow us to have a sovereign independent state. And because people voted against the two-state solution, voted against the Oslo Accords, the United States of America and Israel and some Arab regimes decided to impose a deadly medieval siege on Gaza. We were not allowed to buy milk for our children. We were not allowed to buy fuel for our cars. We were not allowed to buy medicine. And this has been going on since then, since 2006. Ilan Pappé, the courageous Israeli historian, called the siege imposed on Gaza incremental genocide. And as if that was not enough, apartheid Israel decided on the 28th of December 2008 to launch a massive attack. I remember I was driving my car at 11:15 and I passed by the central police station of Gaza. 10 minutes after that, I had a huge explosion. That police station was attacked. And at the same time, all police stations from Rafah to Beit Hanun in the north were also attacked. Within 3 minutes, 270 people were killed. The massacre continued for 18 days. More than 1,200 people, including more than 430 children, were killed at the time. We were naive. We Palestinians are naive because we believed that the international community would act, would do something. When 1,200 civilians get killed within 18 days, no, the international community would not stand idle and watch that massacre. But the international community did absolutely nothing at the time. So we waited, and nothing happened. The same scenario took place in 2012, and I remember very well. I was driving my car from the Khan Yunis campus of Al-Aqsa University, which no longer exists, by the way, because apartheid Israel decided to destroy all academic institutions in the Gaza Strip. So I was driving again my car from Khan Yunis to Gaza, where I live. 1:30, I remember very well. And again, Israel did the same thing. For 1 week, apartheid Israel killed more than 200 civilians. What did the international community do? Absolutely nothing. Again in 2014, more than 2,400 people were killed within 51 days. And the international community started talking about both sides not resorting to violence. The colonizer and the colonized, the oppressor and the oppressed. Apartheid Israel has one of the strongest armies in the world. What do Palestinians have? Apartheid Israel has more than 450 nuclear heads, has Apache helicopters, have F-16, F-15, F-35. What do Palestinians have? Nothing. And what did the international community do? Nothing. People are talking about hope. What kind of hope do you expect the victims of this horror still taking place in Gaza? What kind of hope you expect them to nurture? Then during the March of Return, and I remember I used to go every single Friday. I saw kids getting killed. More than 270 people were killed. All of them were civilians. With my own eye, I witnessed that. And the international community, unfortunately, especially the colonial West, as Edward Said put it one day, they blamed the victim. We are being blamed for living in Gaza, for existing, for being there. The international community did absolutely nothing, and this paved the way for what is happening right now in Gaza. I spent, together with my family, the first 2 months of the genocide. I have been displaced 4 times with my 2 little kids who spent nights begging me for bed, for food, and I couldn't provide them with food. We in Gaza, I wanted to start by telling you, about my 40 cousins, together with their families and their kids, their grandchildren who were killed. All of them are civilians. All the civilians, or rather, all the people who died that I know are civilians. Women, children. I can tell you the story of Jana Qudayh, 12 years old, from Khan Yunis, who was starved to death, begging her father for a sip of clean water. and her father couldn't provide her with clean water to drink. The situation right now is more than horrific. The first 2 months, my neighborhood, Rimal, was flattened down on the third day of the genocide. We were asked to move to the north, from Rimal to the north, while they were bombarding the north. I spent that night when they asked us to move with my neighbors, together with more than 7 families, more than 40 people, under the bombardment and airstrikes of the most moral army on earth. The following day, when I looked at my neighborhood, it was completely flattened down. We lost our flat, we lost everything. I left the house only with my t-shirt, only with my t-shirt. Luckily, I fetched my passport. And that's what saved my life. I know that I'm supposed to be dead. And I don't know whether Haider Eid is addressing you right now, or is it my ghost? The first night I spent in Rafah, and that was my third displacement. Apartheid Israel, the most moral army, attacked a house nearby. 14 people were killed. One of the most hated words in Gaza now, and I'm going to say it in Arabic, anqad, rubble. That was my nightmare. That was my family's nightmare. That one day, people will talk about us, about our bodies being found under anqad. Luckily, I have a South African passport. And luckily, the South African government, and I want to say now, thank you. Thank you to the South African government. Thank you to the South African people. And I'm saying this on behalf of all sectors of Palestinian civil society. I'm saying this on behalf of the Palestinian people. And I'm saying this on behalf of the oppressed all over the world. The fact that the international community did absolutely nothing to support the Palestinian people, in fact, hurts us. It really hurts us. But the South African government has decided to say enough is enough. Because these heroes, and I mean it, they are heroes. When they, for us, what they have been saying since the Hague case has been coming to us Palestinians like music to our ears. I have been talking to my family, to my friends in Gaza, and every single time they call me here, they say, please say thank you to South Africa. And now I'm saying this, and I cannot tell you how much we appreciate this true and real act of solidarity with the victims of the genocide taking place right now in Palestine. So what do we want? Since the ICJ ruling until today, Israel has killed more than 2,000 people. Israel doesn't care. Doesn't care about anything. Why doesn't Israel care? Because Israel has the support of the United States of America. Because apartheid Israel has the support of the colonial West. And by the way, some people feel uncomfortable and uneasy when I say apartheid Israel. Amnesty International has labeled Israel as an apartheid Israel. Human Rights Watch, even Israel's mainstream human rights organization, B'Tselem, is saying Israel is an apartheid state. People are still talking about the two-state solution. The two-state solution, and I know some people here disagree with me, is a racist solution par excellence. On what basis are we, the indigenous population, the natives of Palestine, are expected to give this huge compromise, give 78% of Palestine to settler colonists? Why are we expected to do that? You never, people are talking about. I'm sure I'm not being silenced. Right. One last point. Israel's right to self-defense. I am an activist. I am one of the co-founders of the BDS movement. I am also one of the co-founders of the One State campaign. I have never believed in the two-state solution because I have never met personally a South African who supported the Bantustan system in South Africa. And this is why I'm not talking here as a politician. I'm talking here as an activist. And I'm saying that the overwhelming majority of the Palestinian people right now understand very well that the two-state solution is a joke. I personally called it in one of my pieces, the opium of the Palestinian people. And therefore, the solution that can bring peace with justice is a solution a la South Africa, a secular democratic state for all inhabitants of Palestine. A secular democratic state for all inhabitants of Palestine, regardless of race, regardless of ethnicity, and regardless of gender. Thank you so much.
Sea will be free. To the sea will be free. Palestine, away you.
There are no words that would express the depth of condolence I know we all feel for Prof. Eid, and the depth of gratitude we feel for your willingness to share with us in what is only an impossible time. And so all I say is we will not look away, and we are in the deepest solidarity with you. We will now have a chance to ask a few questions. We ask you to be very brief. I wouldn't want to stop you, but I will. We're going to take a single round and ask the speakers to take note of those questions addressed to them, and then we'll have a single round of answers before we head inside for some food. We're very lucky to have the Director General of DIRCO, Zane Dango, joining us for the Q&A, able to answer international relations related questions. So those who would like to address questions to any of our speakers, please raise your hand and we'll have some roving mics. Are there more mics than just this one? Okay, excellent. Okay, so we've got a first hand over there. We'll start there and I think we'll move this way.
Hi, great appreciation as well to all the speakers. I wanted to know about I know that Council can't speak much about it because it's an ongoing case, but about the additional measures that have been asked for. Are you able to tell us what the likelihood, anything about the likelihood? Are you able to tell us a bit more detail about what those additional measures are? Anything about that would be much appreciated. Thank you so much.
Other questions? Go for it.
Just hold it a bit there. Oh, okay. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for a remarkable, informative, highly passionate evening. Thank you to all the speakers. Wendy Isaac here. I have a quick question for Mr. Dango as the DG. Just from the perspective of engaging other African states in terms of cross-border solidarity, expressions of solidarity in the cases that, I mean, there's the ICJ one matter, the case has already taken place, we're waiting for the mayors, but there's the case that's starting, or the hearings on the advisory opinion that are starting on Monday, which have much broader questions, bringing in questions around Jerusalem, all kinds of things. To what extent is South Africa able to engage in a meaningful way other African states to be more useful in this struggle? Thank you.
Okay, great. We had a question over here.
Thank you so much, all of you. Many people have said tonight our struggles are interconnected. As a Jewish South African, I stand here against Zionism. But as a South African white person, I stand here against racism. And I'm hoping some of you can say something about Zionism as a form of racism and about Zionism as a form of white supremacy. Because Zionism is a white supremacist, European colonial, settler colonial project. And that is a struggle we still have to fight all around the world, including here. Thank you.
More questions? Okay, great.
Everyone will say thank you, but I'll just say it again. Also, so my question is for Advocate Adila. Firstly, I'm sure everyone knows this by now, but obviously the fact that your name means justice is something that I think bodes very well for how the case will go in terms of prospects. So Minister Pando spoke a few days ago about, I guess, intimidation that she's received from Zionists. And I was just wondering if the legal team has had any of that, or in general, what has been the reception, personally, to taking on this really important case. Thank you.
Yeah, I'd just like to extend my thanks as well. My question is for Professor Eid. You spoke about the importance of bringing a one-state solution into the conversation, and I was wondering if there'd been any moves in South African government to explicitly support the one-state solution and what that movement looks like.
Thank you so very much. I feel so much love for everyone here, such deep love. I just want to say I am the international community. We are the international community. What can I do?
Oh, okay, more questions? Okay, behind you.
Can you hear me? Oh, thank you. Thank you to all the presenters. My question is about the Arab world or the Muslim world. because I don't see them being so vocal against the Zionists. With the region having so much wealth of oil, and Africa having so much wealth of minerals, I believe we can actually impose sanctions against the white supremacy, America and those who are supporting the war. So I want to find out from the panel, why can't we have discussions on that? Because right now the American dollar is becoming stronger, the Israel shekel is stronger, and why there is this genocide or atrocities happening? Thank you.
I saw a hand in the middle there. No? Other hands? Okay, Tanya.
Over here. I just wanted to thank the South African Jews for Free Palestine for what was, I think, a little bit of a magical evening here in the gardens. I thought it was really incredibly beautiful. But my question is a little harder for the DG. What is the government stance on South Africans serving the IDF, and what measures are they going to take? Thanks.
A question for the DG. South Africa has taken a strong and courageous stance. How does this play out? We're getting some repercussions from the global north. How does this play out for South Africa? And in a new world with multipolar kind of global forces, what's our protection from BRICS and other forces?
Okay, I think we'll take one, maybe two last questions, so the speakers can kind of keep hand of everything. Are there any last hands? Okay, if I'm not missing anyone, then let's go to the speakers again, give them an opportunity to answer. Oh, one more. There's always one more.
Hi, this is for the DG and for the rest of South African government. We have a fantastic legal system that is supporting what's happening again to the Palestinians. But we don't see that support in any other areas in the government. We don't see it in support in sport. We don't see it in our economy. We don't see it in any other departments. When are we going to actually make a stand in the whole of South Africa, and the South African government can actually lead us in that way? We don't see any movement. We should be boycotting a whole bunch of areas against the US, against Britain, against Israel, and we are not doing that. Can the government please try and answer that? Thank you.
You want me to start? It's the first time that a minister says I must start. Okay, I'll start with and I hope I can answer all the questions that were directed to me, but I'm sure Minister Lamola and others will add in. On the additional measures, and it's a pity that, given the oath that Adila can weigh in, but we've got a fantastic legal team, and when Prime Minister Netanyahu first made mention of his intentions with Rafah, our first port of call was to look at what the Security Council could do. But our legal team decided that just in case the Security Council is, as usual, moribund and does nothing, that we should consider what else we could do. And they had drafted a letter that we kept in our back pocket. And when the Security Council felt, we could see there was no motion in the Security Council, we then decided to put that letter in. And that letter essentially uses the rules of the court, Article 71, and it urges the court to use its own powers and assess the situation. And based on that, to
to, decide on new provisional measures that will focus on preventing more deaths in the in the Rafah area particularly. Of course, extending it to the whole of Gaza. We left it up to the discretion of the court. We did not want to be too prescriptive in what we wanted them to do. But I think it was quite implicit in our letter that it's about to prevent more irreparable harm, more deaths. And given the fact that normally 280,000 people, and Haidar can speak more eloquently on this, normally live in that part of Gaza, and it's already densely populated. But now with 1.5 million people living there, any armed action is going to give rise to many, many massacres, and that's what we wanted to prevent. The court responded within 2 days of receiving our letter, which was a good sign, and they gave Israel 2 days from their acknowledgement to respond. And we all have seen, or many of us have seen, Israel's response, which was, in the words of one of the lawyers, where I can't mention, contemptuous. But it was contemptuous. We're not sure what the court would say, but essentially I think there's a good sign that they did respond as quickly as they did. Wendy, on your question on engagement with other states, on the advisory opinion matter that's before the court, that emerged from the General Assembly to look at the legality of the occupation and apartheid, there's 52 states that will be making oral presentations from Monday onwards. South Africa is one of them. We're presenting on the 20th. I think it's the largest number of states ever presenting on a case like this. And the coordination has been quite extensive. So there's a lot of coordination between capitals, but also in The Hague, between embassies and also between legal teams about how to approach taking this case forward, because it's quite an important one, as you pointed out. So we are engaging with the African states that are involved, but also with other states from Latin America and elsewhere. But 52 states is quite a significant number of states that have intervened in this particular case. On the ICJ case, because we took a contentious route, Article 9, the scope for consultation wasn't that big. We had to keep it quiet, and we could only make it public once we've actually filed the application. But we are engaging with states about how and when they can intervene. And most of them who have indicated they will intervene will wait for the memorial process where South Africa files its memorial, and they will then assess how and when and what angle they will take in the intervention. So there is a lot of engagement with them. I think the Zionism and racism one would be Haidar. I just want to think, what are some of the others? The two states, yeah. So South Africa has historically used the two-state approach because it was the prevailing legal instruments in the international community. So a lot of the resolutions do speak to the need for a two-state solution based on 1967 and the right of return of all the refugees.
I was born. It's because my father got a 50 Rand increase in his salary, in his yearly salary. So on the day that he got an increase, he phoned my mother and said, "Oh, we can have another one now." So that's the story of my coming into being. And so she's better placed to answer why it is that they do. She never really quite answers the question straightforwardly, though. Have there been personal repercussions? The short answer is yes. You know, there's hate, there's a lot. And that's been happening for a while, it continues. Intimidation, I will say no, because I won't be intimidated. So I won't use the word, intimidation. I don't want to put that power into anybody's hands. But does it hurt? Yes, it does hurt when it comes from places and people who are close to you and who you have respect for. But does it intimidate? No. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. Then, what can I do as a member of the international community? I think, firstly, what you are doing this evening is the first step. And wherever you are, in any other platform, whether it's social media or any platform, we all have an obligation to speak for peace, for love, and to condemn the actions of the state of Israel. And this brings me to the issues of repercussions and why the South African government had to do what we have done. In terms of the Genocide Convention, as a signatory, we were obliged to take action. So we had an obligation in terms of the convention to act as a signatory. So any other state that is raising why South Africa and why there must be repercussions, they are doing it for political expediency. They are aware that anyone who's a signatory had an obligation to take this matter further. And that includes the US and many other states across the globe. And even themselves, they are beginning to answer these questions to their own citizens who are beginning to put pressure to say, what are you doing? Because you are aware there's a convention, you cannot continue to support and abet the state, the Zionist state of Israel, to maim innocent kids and children. In Japan and in many parts of the world, they are all facing pressure because the international community's consciousness has been reawakened by the case of South Africa. What was not known and what was hidden prior to the ICJ is now laid bare in the eyes of the international community. They used to watch clips, but they did not understood the magnitude of the operations of the state of Israel. The case has reawakened that consciousness of the international community. It has laid bare. They are now open and they are taking action. And I believe that is the reason why there is a shift now in the narrative in the global community. And I just call for them to continue to do so, and all individuals across the globe to act in unison, because as Adila says, what will now count the most is what each individual says in every corner of the world and what they do. The court indeed does help to put the pressure, to take action, and to assert and reaffirm the international rules-based society. But the voices of the international community, they add more to help that consciousness of the world. It is on the second issue that is also being raised, and I have heard also the Prime Minister of Israel saying that we are abusing the international platforms, including the court and all that. I mean, how can we be accused of such an abuse when the court has affirmed the case from the beginning that indeed there are plausible acts of genocide? Now, when we go back to the court, we are just saying to the court it must use its own discretion. We, as Zain has said, we have allowed the court enough space to how it wants to use its discretion. And we're using the rules of the court. How can we be accused of abusing the system when the system is meant exactly to deal with such issues? So these are issues which we continue to clarify to the international community. And we are not abusing that platform because the court in the past, there is precedent to the fact that it has invoked these rules that it has for itself. It has set for itself in the Legrand case, the court has invoked this article. So there is nothing abusive by the South African government in this regard. With regards to the ones that are fighting, indeed, it is a criminal offense for anyone to join forces anywhere in the world in a war situation without permission, and such a person is subject to be prosecuted if they are known in the South African courts. Thank you.
Please join me in giving a final round of applause to our panel. We are going to have a very brief vote of thanks, but before that I wanted to just explain how the foods are going to work. We're going to enter through the door that I'm pointing to now and come out this way. When you're in there, there are 3 tables of food that all contain the exact same thing, so choose one. And there's also drinks in the corner. All the food is vegetarian. And if we can move through quickly, then as many of us as possible can get through. Thank you very much, and I'll hand over to my colleague Noah for our vote of thanks.
Yeah, I'll be as quick as possible, but there's many people to thank. First of all, we only came here together this evening because of the incredible work of the South Africa's ICJ team, and it was an incredible honor to have Minister Lamola, Senior Advocate Adila Hassim, and DIRCO DG Zane Danga with us. We thank the Ministers of Office, in particular Crispin Piri, and at DIRCO Nikki Bowman. Most importantly, it was an honor to have among us a leading Palestinian intellectual. Thank you, Prof. Eid, for sharing his insights, and to him and his family for being with us tonight. We are presenting each of you with artworks, lino cuts which were etched by students and teachers at WITS, connecting the next generation of freedom fighters with those who have spoken and answered questions today. At SHFP, many people have worked hard this evening. Zandi Sherman, who has been leading us through this evening, and in so many ways, small and big, made this event happen. Our chair, Runa King, who couldn't be with us, but enabled this event in many ways. Thank you to Jessica and Keith for the music, to Lily, Ro, Tara, Merlin, David, and so many others for their work towards this evening. And finally, we would like to thank the Nelson Mandela Foundation for partnering with us in this event. It has been incredibly meaningful to work together on this. At NMF, many different people worked towards this event, but without Samaya Hendricks and Samantha Mashapa, none of this would have been possible. We would also like to thank Taylor Johnson and the rest of the communications team, Sepang Mosekua, Etenkosi Singenu, Mandla Nkosi Dakada, Morongwa Fukubaye, Solomon Maklatsi, as well as the IT and facilities team, Ben Magagula, Joe Detabo, and additional people assisting at the NMF, Norma Ramachloki, and of course the foundation acting CEO, Prof. Vern Harris. Finally, thank you to every person here. We are here to make connections and create solidarity towards liberation. May we work together for a free Palestine. Yeah, in case it wasn't clear, you're all free to go eat now. Oh, sorry. Oh, if you could please return the books. Where? Oh, what are you saying? But now just saying.